What's up, guys? Welcome back to Zoa MMA. I'm your host, as always, the Zoa. I want to start this video like I always like to, and that's thanking you, viewers, for watching the videos. I can't really put into words how much I appreciate it. Still trying to figure out what makes some videos get better viewership than others. We've had some really good viewership on some videos, though, lately, so I really appreciate you. Please share with your friends, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, leave any feedback you have on the videos in the comments. I love to hear from the viewers. It means a lot to me to hear all that. So, again, like and subscribe so you know when the next video is coming. And I'm just going to keep pumping out content. I'm really enjoying doing this for you guys. On today's video, we're going to break down UFC Fight Night, Almeida versus Lewis. Pretty good card here, taking place in Brazil. Uh, a Brazilian fighter in every fight on this card, which is actually a really cool thing about this card, in my opinion. We're going to have one that is a Brazilian versus a Brazilian on this card. That's coming off a late change just coming out late last night. And then the only other news really out of this card is obviously the Derek Lewis arrest due to speeding, something like 130 something and a 50, which obviously isn't ideal, but it doesn't seem to be having any effect on this card, so not going to go too in depth on that here. I actually think we'll just go ahead and start breaking down this card. I have the first one pulled up here. Cowie Fernandez versus Mark DeCasey. DeCasey, the favorite here at minus 140. Come back on Fernandez at plus 115. This fight at 155 pounds. The first fight of Fernandez's career in the UFC, taking place in front of the Brazil home crowd. So that's going to be really exciting for him. I haven't seen a ton of tape on him yet, but from what I have seen, he's pretty green. He's got some flashy striking, good jiu-jitsu, very dangerous early in the fights. And with DeCasey coming in here, he's a journeyman. He's on a two-fight skid. He's really changed his whole style over the last few fights. He's got a good striking arsenal, but he's kind of just become a takedown merchant. He's looking to lay and pray, just stay on top of you, not really working for any kind of finish. So I don't really see Fernandez being the type of guy who's going to let you just lay and pray on him. I see him making moves to try and get back to the feet or use his jiu-jitsu on the ground. So I don't think that's going to be an effective style here. I see Fernandez finding some success on the feet and then being able to use that jiu-jitsu on the ground. So I'm not sure he'll get the finish here. This is a probably higher quality opponent than he's used to fighting. Maybe gets a little bit of trouble in his UFC debut, but I still think he can do enough here to get the win. So I'm going to take Fernandez by decision in this spot. Moving into our next fight, we've got Montserrat Conejo Ruiz fighting against Eduarda Mora. Mora, the big favorite here at minus 600, fighting at 115 pounds, and she is 9-0 coming into this fight. If you haven't seen her Contender Series fight, it's definitely something worth going back and watching, in my opinion. Mora just looked really good there. She's so big for this weight class. Has 6 inches in height and reach coming into this. A good grappler, does a good job controlling the fight on the ground. And I think this fight's going to be pretty similar to Ruiz's last fight against Jacqueline Amarim. She was just able to get held down in that fight, really controlled. I expect Mora to be able to do that same thing, get the takedown, keep the fight there. And really from that point, it's as long as she lets it go. She may have more trouble getting a finish here than she did on the Contender Series. I think she's fighting a higher quality opponent here than she did then. But I still expect her to be pretty dominant in this fight. So I'm going to take Mora by decision here. Going into our next fight, a fighter I always have a lot of trouble with here. This is going to be Angela Hill versus Denise Gomez. Angela Hill plus 105 here. Come back. Denise Gomez, the slight favorite at minus 125. And Angela Hill's just a fighter I can just never seem to get right. I've been predicting her fights for as long as she's been in the UFC, and I couldn't tell you how few I've gotten right. So take my word with a grain of salt in this one. Angela Hill, if you don't know much about her, she got a late start to her MMA career. Started, I think, just taking kickboxing classes and found her way all the way to the UFC. And I discounted her for that earlier in her UFC career. I didn't find her to be all that impressive really anywhere. but she's made a lot of improvements in her career. She's not great at any discipline necessarily, but she's well rounded and very durable. So even though she's getting old at this point and probably near the end of her career, I think she might still have enough in this spot. Gomez is a young prospect. She's only 23 years old. Definitely more polished striker. Obviously showed that she has heavy hands in her last fight, but I'm kind of afraid of her going headhunting here and maybe as this fight goes on, maybe giving the advantage to Angela Hill. So I could see this one going either way. I'm going to go with Angela Hill in this one. Tough one to call. Like I said, I'm almost always wrong in Angela Hill fights, so take my word with a grain of salt, but I'm going to ride with her in this one. I think she's still got a little bit left in the tank, so we are going to go with Angela Hill by decision. Then we're going to go into Vitor Petrino versus Modestas Bukauskas. Petrino, the favorite here at minus 225, and just a very powerful striker. He's got some great kicks. Showed that he can mix in takedowns in his last fight. But I really don't feel he has the highest fight IQ when it comes to mixing that stuff in. I saw him hurt his opponent a couple times in his last fight and then start going for takedowns when he could have started working the finish. He doesn't really throw combinations. He's kind of a one shot at a time kind of guy. That always kind of worries me. Unless you're throwing with some serious knockout power, I would much rather see you throwing combinations. Also, a little bit of a gas tank concern with him that I've seen in his last few fights. But I'm not, as much as I'm not fully sold on Petrino, Bukauskas might be the perfect matchup for him here. He's very hittable. He's going to be open to those power shots. He doesn't have great takedown defense if Petrino wants to be mixing in those takedowns again. I see the only way Bukauskas can win this fight, he's going to have to land the big shot at some point. And he could end it at any point if he does that, but I think it's much more likely that that big shot comes from Petrino. Just, I don't trust Bukauskas with his defense in this spot, so I'm going to go with Petrino here. I'm going to take him by knockout in this spot. Moving into our next fight, Elisehu Zaleski versus Rinat Vakhretdinov. I always mess up his name. This fight at 170, and watching the tape, I really think this could be a closer fight than people are giving it credit for. I don't know. Zaleski did a lot of work on his takedown defense for the Nurmagomedov fight that he had last time out, and I think that's something that could really benefit him here. You know, I think Rinat's probably a bit better than Nurmagomedov was in that spot, but I think Zaleski, if he can keep it at distance, I think he could find some success on the feet if he can stay at a distance. The issue is I see Rinat being so much more elusive with his shots and the amount of kicks Zaleski will want to throw. He's going to find opportunities for takedowns. Rinat's also very active. He does a lot of damage on the ground. I remember in his last fight he landed some big elbows, which I'm not sure is something Zaleski's going to be able to handle. He wasn't really experiencing that same thing when he was fighting Nurmagomedov. He was just kind of getting a hold of him and not doing as much to work towards a finish. So this isn't the exact same fight. I'll take Rinat here. I'm not completely sold that this is a surefire thing here. And I definitely don't like it at a line of him being favored at minus 350. For the sake of the show, I'll take him by TKO, but not something I'd be interested in betting, especially at this line. The next one, I actually like this fight a lot here. Daniel Marcos versus Victor Hugo. Marcos the favorite here, minus 240. Come back on Hugo plus 195, and this fight's at 135 pounds. Marcos being an undefeated fighter coming into this, and I really like his style. I mean, just going back, I haven't watched him all that much in the past. Like, I've seen his fights since he's been in the UFC and seen the way he's fought, but For some reason, it didn't really register with me how much I liked his fight style until I went back and watched the tape this week. He's just really measured with how he fights. He keeps a high guard, uses calf kicks to open up his opponent, picks the big shots that he wants to take wisely, and lands at a really high percentage. I just really like fighters who know what they're trying to do and are really effective with their striking the way he is. And then Hugo on the other side, making his UFC debut, and I really don't think he's that untalented himself. I've seen a lot of people picking this as their dog pick this week. He has some impressive striking, but what really impresses me with him is his grappling. He's very strong, and he has this unique style where he attacks the legs. I know there's other fighters who do this on the ground, but he's got this style of attacking the legs that I really haven't seen before. I remember in the Contender Series fight, he attempted a heel hook and a calf slicer in the fight, and just was very active at going after the opponent's legs when he got to the ground. It was really interesting to see. If you haven't watched that, I recommend you go back and watch it. Um, but I still think Marco's being more measured here. I think he has a good ability to control where the fight takes place and dictate how the fight is going to take place. But just another one, I don't love the line here. There's a reason a lot of people are in on Hugo in this spot. As you can see on the graphic I have here, he was up at plus 200, and as I checked before the show, it was down to plus 195, so it continues to move with the money coming in on Hugo. I still like Marcos in this spot, and I'm going to take Marcos in this spot, but another one like the last fight, I don't like the line. I don't see myself betting this fight. All right, moving on to our next one. This is the one with the late change here. This is going to be Elvis Brenner versus Canyon Khrushchevsky. And this is Khrushchevsky stepping in late for Ribovitz. No line available for this fight yet. Also, you might be able to see this is going to be at catch weight of 165. Last minute fill-in coming in here, so they're giving him the catch weight. And I was leaning Ribovich early in the week when I was looking at this, but now I'm going to have to reassess the situation. I'm not really sure how I'm going to go with this, but it should be a war. It's two Brazilians here, both fighting, love to throw, and I really see a lot of similarities in their styles, the way that they like to throw, the way that they like to work for the takedowns. I think it could make this fight really interesting. And I like Khrushchevsky a lot from what I've seen. I think he's going to come in here a little bigger. He's probably going to be carrying more weight coming in here. But I think I'm going to have to go with the experience here. Brenner training with Oliveira, that's a big plus for me. And the fact that he gets the full camp, not coming in on 3 days' notice, obviously that's a big thing as well. So I'm going to take him here by TKO. And unfortunately, I think Khrushchevsky could have a future in the UFC. I don't think you should discount him because of what happens in this fight. And obviously, Dana will probably give him some favor for stepping in late notice for this. But this probably just isn't the spot for him. Moving on to our next fight, it's going to be Ismael Bonfim versus Vince Pichel. Bonfim, the big favorite here at minus 500, and the first of the Bonfims fighting tonight. And the one who took a loss in his last fight. Clearly came in a bit overconfident, allowed himself to be hit and taken down, and just being real reckless early. It's something that both of the Bonfims have done that makes them so fun to watch and so entertaining, but also puts them at risk of things like this. And he's still very talented. I don't want people to get the idea based off that fight that he wasn't talented. And the UFC obviously wants him to be successful, and I think that's why they're setting him up in this spot with Vince Pichel. I don't see him having much to do against Bonfim here at this point in his career. As long as Bonfim doesn't allow himself to get careless again. I mean, that's always a possibility, but Bonfim is just a much better striker. Pichel keeps his hands down. I see him getting caught at some point in this fight. And I think he probably hurts Pichel and finishes it down on the mat. I'm actually going to take him by Bonfim by submission in this fight. I think it'll get down to the ground from him being hurt, and then he will finish him by submission. But Yeah, no criticism here for Pichel. I just think we're towards the end here. Obviously, you see he's almost 41 years old. I think we're running out of time where this can be sustainable for him. So, yeah, we're gonna go with Bonfim in this spot. Moving into our next fight, Rodolfo Vieira versus Armen Petrosian. Pretty even on this one. I see it was minus 110 when I made this graphic, but it is up to minus 115, a slight favor for Vieira in this spot. And I can see why. I mean, Vieira, he's world class jiu jitsu champion, very dangerous, probably as dangerous as they come on the ground, really. He claims to have made some improvements on the feet. I'm still not completely sold on that. I haven't seen much from him that I makes me think that he's all that good on the feet. And at range, he's still very hittable. Doesn't throw that much. Doesn't have much volume, so that's concerning for me. And Petrosian is just so much more talented, striking on the other side. He's also got pretty good takedown defense, and as good as Rodolfo is at jiu-jitsu, I'm just not all that impressed with his takedowns, and I think that's going to make it difficult for him to win this fight. Um, Now, obviously, if it gets to the ground, Petrosian's probably in trouble, but I don't anticipate that it will. Petrosian should be able to land, and I believe he'll probably finish this fight inside the distance. So I'm going to take Petrosian by TKO in this spot, and we'll go ahead and move on to our next fight. And this is one of my favorite fighters in here right now, uh, Caio Bajalio. Really a big fan of him and his camp and everything that he's been doing in the UFC. And he's going to be going up against Abus Magomedov. Caio, the favorite here at minus 260. And I like I said, I just think Caio's got a big future in the UFC. He's such a smart fighter. He's got underrated and really creative striking, good grappling, very solid cardio. There's just so much to like about him coming into this spot. And Abus could definitely threaten him early. He's very long, real lanky guy, and has some good striking ability. Not a good gas tank out of this guy, though. I'm a little concerned about Kyle being hittable in his last fight. I saw him take a lot of shots. I could see a lot of similarities coming into this fight. But I do expect him to be more measured. I think he knows that Abus doesn't have the best gas tank. And if he can avoid enough damage early, I think the fight plays more to his hand the longer this fight goes on. So I think he's going to work takedowns later in the fight, probably control where it takes place in the later rounds, probably taking round 2 and round 3 by laying on top of him. Still, obviously, doing some damage. Not sure he gets the finish in this spot. Abus is a good fighter. He can probably keep himself alive, but I'm going to take Caio here by decision in this fight. And then moving into a weird fight. I don't really understand why this fight's on this card. This is Rodrigo Nascimento versus Dante Almeida. And this is a fight we've already seen. If it looks familiar, that's because it is. It's a rematch from 2020. Not sure it's a rematch that anyone was asking for, but it is here. And I really don't have a ton of confidence in either of these fighters, which makes it a tough pick to make at heavyweight. I don't like picking what I consider low-level heavyweights, which I don't know if it's fair to call these guys low-level, but they're not at the level of guys that I like to normally back with my money. And I really think it probably plays out the same as the last fight. Nascimento clearly has a big grappling advantage, and as long as he uses that, he should be okay. Dontel Mays obviously has power in his hands. He could finish this fight at any time if he catches him. But I'm going to take Rodrigo here. Certainly not all that confident in it. Gets it on the ground and probably finishes him by submission. That would be my best guess in this spot. And then we move into the co-main. The second Bonfim here, Gabriel Bonfim, taking on Nicholas Dalby here. He's an even bigger favorite than his brother. Obviously, he is the undefeated of the Bonfims at 15-0, coming in here at minus 600. He's definitely been the more impressive of the two to this point, but I think he has the more difficult matchup in this card. Obviously, really polished striking. I've been really impressed with his takedowns, but again, like his brother, these guys can get really wild and leave themselves open. And it hasn't bit Gabriel yet, but it definitely could at any time. I don't see Dalby being the guy to do that. He's more of a volume striker. He's got really good cardio. He could keep landing throughout the fight. And if he can force Bonfim to throw with him, he can probably find some success, I would think. The sooner Bonfim can get this to the ground, though, the better. I think that's probably the easiest route for him to win this fight is by getting it to the ground. Now, if somehow this stays on the feet, I could see Dalby making this into a greasy decision where things look close going into round 3, and it could be either guy's fight at that point. But I think Bonfim is going to take this to the ground early. I think he's going to find a submission, likely to be in round 1. So Bonfim by submission is going to be my pick here, and I feel pretty good about that in this spot. And then we go into our main event, and that's going to be Jailton Almeida versus Derek Lewis. Almeida minus 500 in this spot. I think people are being real quick to discount Derek Lewis, which I have been done before, and it's a mistake. I understand all the positives with Almeida. I'm not blind to how impressive he is. He has great wrestling. He's does good job doing damage when he gets people to the ground, working for submissions, and he has a high level of skill at heavyweight, which isn't something we see all that much, to be completely honest. I've talked about that in other videos. It's just not as skilled of a weight class as the others. It's a lot of heavy hitters, and that works at this weight class a lot of the time. But I don't understand why, time and time again, people want to count Derek Lewis out. I really don't understand it. I saw his desire to continue fighting in his last fight, where he came in really in shape for that fight, showed a lot of urgency in the fight. He was working forward and won that fight very quickly. And I saw something with Almeida in his fight against Rosenstruck. He was just shooting takedowns blind. He wasn't doing anything to cover them up. And that'd be a very dangerous proposition against a guy like Derek Lewis. I don't think that's something you can do against a fighter like this. And if this fight gets to the ground, obviously Derek's probably in a lot of trouble. But he has this weird, uncanny ability that I've seen. The only guy that really got him down and held him down there and didn't allow him to do anything else was Daniel Cormier. But there's a lot of the times where Derek Lewis gets taken down and he just stands up. He doesn't use the typical forms that fighters use to work their way back to their feet. He just stands up. And maybe Almeida's too good of a guy for him to do that. I wouldn't count on it if this goes to the ground that Derek Lewis gets the win here. But I think the chance of him landing that big shot that we've just seen time and time again is there. And so I'm going to ride with Derek Lewis as the big underdog in this spot. If you're giving me him at this kind of dog money, I'm going to take it. Maybe Almeida comes in a little too confident and shoots blind and fucks around and finds out the Black Beast doesn't play that game. And so I'm going to take Lewis here by KO. I think that's a really interesting fight. And I really, like I said, I don't understand why so many people are so quick to discount Derek Lewis completely. I understand why he's the dog in this spot, but I'm seeing pretty much no one picking him here. So I'm going to go contrarian. I'm going to take the big dog money. So that's going to do it for this card, guys. Again, sorry, I've talked about it on a previous video. I'm still recovering from being a little sick, so my voice isn't 100% there, but hopefully I got all the content out there for you guys. Might try and get another video out towards the end of this week, breaking down how I'm going to bet this card, just give you an idea of what I'm looking at here. But again, as always, thanks for watching, guys. Really hope you enjoyed the video. Give me some feedback down in the comments. Let me know what else you'd like to see from me. And until next time, guys, see ya.